So Monday is the first phase of the working week sales process. We're finally here. We're finally at the detail which you can apply to the interactions you have in a sales call. And what's more, you can apply them to an interview as well. So we're going to use this, we're going to come on to as a bonus section later, how you can use this process to master your interviews and get the jobs you need and want. So, Monday, opening a sales call. It's a critical phase to the overall success of the sales call. If you get great at opening a sales call, I can assure you the other sections that come after it, the other phases, will flow really, really nicely. This is your opportunity to present yourself as somebody people want to buy from. I mean, have you ever heard the expression, people buy from people? I'm sure you have. It's been around for a long, long time, but it's true. People buy from people. We're talking about the emotion again. Remember the emotion in the chimp? People will buy from people they like over their logical reasons for them buying from them. So I think we need to look at that carefully. So how do you do that? How do you present yourself in the opening as somebody people want to buy from? Well, I want to say to you first and foremost, look up The Attractive Character by Russell Brunson. Russell is the founder of ClickFunnels, serial entrepreneur, written loads of books about the internet and how to get clicks and traffic and sell things online and stuff like that. He's brilliant, and I strongly recommend you look up his stuff, buy his stuff. Go and look up The Attractive Character by Russell, and it explains what we're talking about, which is we're not talking about physically good looking, although that can work for some people. We're talking about what attributes do people have that makes them attractive to other people and make them want to buy from them. It's as simple as that. It's a really key thing because your own personal image has got to be right. I mean, do you look and sound the part for your industry? By that I mean, are you wearing the similar clothes to the customer group that you're selling to? Or do you look like a salesperson they would expect to be dealing with, somebody professional from their industry? Because that's all part of it. But also, are you an expert? Do you come across in your first initial introduction as somebody that actually knows what they're talking about? It's all part of it. So go and look up The Attractive Character by Russell. I strongly recommend it. I strongly recommend all his content. It's brilliant. I find him one of the most refreshing people online. There's lots of people hawking stuff that's no good online. Russell's the real deal. So what are the main factors which lead to a successful sales call? Let's recap, because we've covered this a couple of times. An explicit need from the customer, so a focus on explicit needs of a customer. When you can satisfy two or more of these needs, so we want to build as many of these as we possibly can. When we use a consultative sales process, which is what we're learning. And when there's a clear sales objectives planned in advance, which we've just covered in our pre-call planning. But the next bit is when there is a formal introduction and agenda, which is why Monday is so important. Because when we're talking about formal, I'm not talking about making it stuffy, talking about making it kind of stilted and kind of like all formal and buttoned up. I'm talking about making it so that the customer knows what's coming next, making them realize that what's happening here is we're going to sell something and I'm going to be asking for you to do something following this. Because that's so important. If they think it's just a nice conversation, by the end of the call and you close, it will come as a surprise to them. Whereas if you master this bit and you have a formal introduction and agenda, you put yourself on the front foot from the very start. So your objectives. What are your objectives on Monday? Build rapport. So everyone talks about rapport. But remember what we said, people buy from people. We're going to build rapport so they want to buy from you. And I'm going to tell you in a moment how you build rapport. Everybody talks about rapport in sales, but then they're usually terrible at it. So many of the people that train in this subject, you meet them in person and they're rubbish at building rapport. But I'm going to teach you how you actually build rapport. It's not a science by any means, but there are certain things you can do that will make you so much better at building rapport with people. And it is your opportunity to set that formal agenda. As we just said, you've got to set a formal agenda. And you're going to signpost your intention to sell up front. And this massively reduces the risk of the nice call, no action scenario you just saw. So that's the worst case scenario really for a salesperson, almost more so than a no, is the Nice call. Yeah, we had a really good discussion. They think I'm a really nice guy. They think I'm a really nice person, really nice girl. I've done really nice things for them. However, they don't ever do anything. They don't ever take the action we require. They are the worst calls because they waste time, precious time you do not have to give to people that don't intend to do anything, which is why the formal agenda and your introduction is so important. So how do you open the call? Smile, be friendly and engaged. Sounds simple. It really is. You need to be somebody someone wants to deal with. Now, the reason I say it sounds simple is because I've worked with lots of people that are terrible at this. I worked with one guy that was literally a walking misery cloud. Nobody wanted to speak to him. Nobody wanted to deal with him because he'd say all the right things. He was very knowledgeable, knew what he was doing, but he was just not good company to be with. He didn't smile, he wasn't friendly, and he made it perfectly clear that the only reason he was doing this job was because he was forced to and he had to, and that really doesn't go down well. You need to say to your customer, I'm friendly, I'm smiling, I'm engaged, I want to hear what you've got to say. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions in a moment in the Tuesday phase of the call, and I want to know what your responses are going to be. And good body language is so important for projecting these good feelings. You need to have good feelings towards the customer you're dealing with and that person. It's really common when you get into a sales job and you've been doing it for a while, when you've had a few no's, you've had a few rejections, to start feeling slightly negative about your customer group. You start to think to yourself, why are they so difficult? And it comes across in your body language. It comes across in your feelings and the things you're projecting towards them. So you need to break that. You need to have good body language. You need to actually feel positive towards your customers. Otherwise, it will come across. So we've also got to break the ice. Now, it's something a lot of people don't like. Actually, starting a conversation with somebody can seem quite daunting. But if you're in a sales job, you're the person who has to be proactive in this situation. You have to come up with some strategies of how you can break the ice and get into a conversation. So small talk, and we're going to come on to rapport building in a moment. We're going to have a whole section on rapport building. Lots of people talk about it in sales and sales training, but they don't often tell you exactly how you go about building it. So we're going to talk about that. But in terms of breaking the ice, small talk is important. Some people don't like it, some people think it's irrelevant, but it's actually a part of the process of breaking the ice. It follows social convention. So when people talk about things like the weather, it may seem pointless, but it's a form of speech we're all familiar with. So it's something that puts people at ease and starts the conversation. Your brief introduction. So you need to briefly introduce yourself. It doesn't want to be a huge introduction. It just needs to be something so they know who you are. And let's be honest, they probably don't really care who you are at this point in the call. They just want the social convention of you introducing yourself so they know who you are and know what to expect. So in section 2, we're going to really focus in on that because, that, like I said earlier, this is the key to opening up a really successful sales call. So the next most important thing is you need to link effectively to the business at hand. So you can't just keep the small talk going. That will be irritating. Let's think about it. So this customer has agreed to see you for an appointment. They are expecting you to discuss business. Now, you don't want to dive in too early with this, but what you do want to do is when you feel the customer is ready to move on to business, you need to get into that because that's what they want. That's originally why they agreed to see you. They didn't agree to see you to just talk about your views on politics or the current COVID situation or anything like that. They have had the appointment with you because specifically they're interested in what you've got to sell to them. So look for the social cues. Things like a change in body language, a tone of voice, change in tone of voice, a pause in a conversation. So, there's a natural pause, which would be, uncomfortable and, most people would think of as an awkward silence. But that's actually your cue as a salesperson to actually set the formal agenda. So let's look at how we do that. So a really easy way to do this is directly link your introduction to what's previously happened. So, how did the call come about? Did you bump into somebody at a conference or an exhibition? In which case, draw on that. Use that to link into the reason you're there. Use that to other situations, like you have a customer that you have, there's a mutual customer that you both know. Use the fact that you know them to introduce the business and get into the business at hand. Why? So why is this so important? So it makes the most of your customer's time. You have to be respectful of your customer's time. They've agreed to see you, and they probably haven't got endless time just to discuss all sorts of things. So you need to make the most of your customer's time. But in sales, we talked about your own time management earlier. Your time is precious to you. You need to be making as many calls. You need to be busy. You've got lots of administrative jobs you need to get done. You haven't got time to just gas about anything and everything with a customer. You need to respect their time and respect your time. And it is professional. It shows you have purpose. It shows you are a serious business person. If you are there just to talk about the soap operas you've been watching and all those other things, it makes you look very unprofessional. It makes you look like what's known as the professional visitor, somebody that comes in to see a customer, and yet there may be an element of building a relationship. There may be a bigger game at play here, but you'll have loads of opportunities to do that. You have loads of service opportunities when somebody becomes a customer to have all of those relationship building conversations. You, at this point with this customer, need to be professional, set an agenda, and move to the business at hand. So now we've done this, we need to gain agreement from our customer that they're happy with this agenda. So when? Immediately following your introduction. Okay, so don't hang around with this. So gain agreement from them, because it's really, really important. So once you've gained agreement from them, and I'm going to come on to this in a second, it's giving you permission to then sell. How? So ask a short, closed question confirming acceptance of your proposed agenda. So it's a simple question. It doesn't have to be anything mind-blowing. It's a simple, so how does that sound? Are you happy to do this? Or maybe use a time-bound thing. So are you happy to spend the next 15 minutes discussing this? Is there anything else you would like to include in this agenda? All things which give you the opportunity to take control and to lead this sales conversation. And why do we gain agreement for our agenda? Really, really important one here. This is why I've separated it onto its own slide. So why? So if the customer isn't happy with your proposed agenda, so they're not happy that you're going to sell something to them, you can, or sell something that they're not necessarily interested, you can adjust this early on. So rather than going all the way through a call and then finding out at the end that they have a massive objection that you didn't even consider, if you do this up front, it gives them an opportunity and gives you an opportunity to adjust the agenda and propose an agenda which is more up there, more in tune with what they want to hear. So, next point. It gives you control, as I've just said, gives you control of the process by gaining permission to move to the next stage of the sales process. So the Tuesday, the interviewing stage, you need to find out what your customer's needs are in the next phase of the call. And we're going to look at Tuesday in detail on how we do that. But if you gain permission to do that, then it makes it far easier. If you don't do this, the biggest thing you're going to encounter is the customer will take control of the conversation, and they will start asking you questions. They'll start throwing early objections at you immediately and making it so that it throws you off track. So really important that by gaining permission to move on to the next stage of the sales process, you take control. It reduces the early objections as well. Now, the final point, and probably the most important point here, is psychologically, if they've just said a yes to your proposed agenda, if they've just said, okay, yeah, that's great, yeah, that's, please do, please let's discuss my requirements, please let's discuss how you can help me. They've just said yes to you. They've just psychologically said yes to you, which is a very, very, very important part of the chain of positive agreement that you want to create within a sales call. I don't know if you've ever heard of a concept called the three-time convincer, and it strays slightly into kind of the dodgy sales tactics, but psychologically it does work. If you gain agreement from somebody for something small, something mundane, they're much more likely to give you agreement for other things that you'll have in that conversation. So what you really want to do is right from the opening, and I'm going to cover this in the closing section of the training, right from the opening, if you create a positive chain of agreement, you are much more likely to gain agreement for the big thing that you came here for actually agreement for the objective that you set beforehand. So hopefully that makes sense. So let's just summarize quickly. So sell yourself. That's your introduction. People buy from people. Remember, you never get a second chance to make a first impression with your customers. So sell yourself, present yourself as this attractive character, but really importantly, make it about the customer. Make them feel that they're the important one. Then move efficiently to the business at hand. Set a formal agenda. Don't waste your customers' time. Don't beat around the bush. Get in there and set a formal agenda so you can get the agreement to move forwards. And signpost your intention to close. You are going to close this call and ask them to do something following it, and therefore you are going to gain agreement to move to the next stage of the call, which is your first yes in a chain of many.